Learn the latest news currently involving Declan Rice, as news has come out that West Ham have currently rejected our approach for the player. We have updates on the future of Maatsen. We'll talk about the board promising to sign Thomas Tuchel 6 players in this window, as well as another update on Ligt, as it's official that contact has been made for the player. Some of the things to break down, discuss and get into, but before I get into anything, you guys, of course, make sure you watch my latest video talking about Ligt. I give the player analysis, pros and cons, as well as my thoughts and opinions behind the signing as well. So I hope you guys definitely enjoyed today's videos. Smash the like button, let's get over 3k likes, and without wasting any more time, now let's start with the first story and let's discuss the latest updates that just broke surrounding Ligt. Now this report comes out from italiangoal.com and they report that it's official. We have made official contact now over the availability of Ligt. Now this doesn't mean that we are starting to make a bid now for the player. Literally it's about starting and opening a dialogue now to find out the availability for the player. Now Juventus are still holding out hopes that Ligt will continue to remain there. His existing deal expires in 2024. They're hoping that he signs a new contract that takes his new deal to 2026. It's believed that if Ligt does not sign and agree to a new deal, then Juventus would be open to selling him in this window. However, as you know from my previous video, they would want around 100 million euros, which is like 85 million. Now it does seem like more information is coming out surrounding the contract offer from Juventus to Ligt. It seems like they've offered him 8 million euros, which is a reduction in his current wages, plus more bonuses to make up for that, and they've decided to take away any release clause over a new deal. But it looks like Ligt is rejecting things, and for me, when you see things like this, it's basically telling me that Ligt wants to leave, and he is open to interest now to moving to the Premier League. We know that the key areas right now is to find replacements now for Rudiger and Andreas Christensen. Ligt is high on the agenda. A move for Koundé, I guess, is currently stalling. I guess there's really no rush right now to get a deal done for the player. However, Barcelona keep coming back with new offers now to try and force a move. And we kind of know that Koundé would even prefer to sign for Barcelona if a move to us does fail. So let's hope that we're not in a situation now where we, sacrifice the Koundé now to focus our efforts on Ligt. Could we sign both players? It does seem like that should be the possibility. A lot more will come from this story, you guys. And as I'm saying, if you want to get more insightful thoughts and information over Ligt, make sure you watch the latest video in the card above. So right now, let's move on to the second story and let's discuss the board's plans for Thomas Tuchel during this summer. Basically, a report came out from Matt Law from The Independent, where Thomas Tuchel has been promised by Clear Lake Capital that 6 players will be signed in this window. Realistically, it does seem like they are going to involve 2 centre backs, 1 wing back, 2 attacking players and a midfield player at this point in time. However, with how windows typically progress, if more players were to leave, we could sign more, or if more players can't leave, then maybe we might not sign as much. But 6 players is the plan and guidelines that everyone is following to try and complete in this window. The report confirms the fact that new owners feel like they can't necessarily compete with Man City and Liverpool in this current window, so it's quite clear that their strategy is to focus on signings that can improve us in the long term. With their emphasis on supporting Tuchel and moving out Lukaku, they understand that they can't dip into the market again now to sign a premium forward because they cost too much money and they're not really about. So the strategy, as I've been saying for a while now, is to look at multifaceted attacking players with an emphasis on spreading the goals out throughout the team. We know that Tuchel has up to 200 million to spend. This does not guarantee that 200 million will be the set amount spent, especially considering that if more players are sold, then potentially there could be more money or less money if players don't leave. A senior source said in the article, the key is to basically work with Tuchel to come up with the best players that are available. We really want him to make sure we have a good defence. We've got depth in midfield already. We're not desperate for an out and out striker. That says quite a lot. I mean, naturally we are absolutely stacked in midfield currently. We're only signing a new midfield player if an existing midfield player decides to leave, which isn't looking as likely at this point in time. Naturally, we need to plug holes in defence, and of course, we need to replace attacking players, with many being quite unhappy and discussing their future. Currently, we know that Pulisic is holding talks this week to discuss his future with Todd Boehly, and he could join potential departures involving Ziyech, Timo Werner, Kepa, Aspie, Alonso, plus potentially others as well. We know that Todd Boehly is currently acting as our interim sporting director naturally until we're able to actually bring in someone new, and I will do a separate video talking about potential sporting director candidates to just give you guys a bit of an insight behind some of the options available in the market. We found out that Tuchel's goals for the board this season is to make sure that he does secure Champions League football. That is the one and main goal for next season. Now, just because we aren't looking to challenge to win the league title, it doesn't mean that the new owners don't understand that this is what our fans want to see. And as they said too, to continue on with other sources said in the article, fortunately, there's reasonable opportunities in the market right now in order to satisfy the fans' desires to be competitive. I think it's a combination of moves, and there's 5 or 6 that we're going to look to make. Now, 2 of the main big players being looked at currently are Raheem Sterling and Matthias de Ligt. So for me, this is the news that I want to hear. I mean, I'm not expecting any title challenges. I'm hoping to be surprised, of course, and I do think that depending on the talent that we can acquire in this particular window, they could change everything happening for next season. So we have an idea now of the board's demands from Thomas Tuchel and what could happen in this window. And now we move on to the next story, and let's discuss the latest news currently surrounding Declan Rice. Now, these reports come out from reporter Graham Bailey of 90 Min Football, and he reports that West Ham have turned down our approach for Declan Rice. Now, I did tell you guys that we were going to make an approach, and an approach doesn't mean it's a bid or an offer coming in. It means that it's starting a dialogue now to make something happen. Let's break down the story first though, and basically West Ham are trying their best at this point in time to get the player to commit to a new deal, and their hope is that if they offer a release clause as part of a new deal, could that possibly tempt Rice to remain at the club? I'm not too sure though. How many times does Rice have to keep constantly rejecting new contract offers? I mean, he rejected an 8-year deal worth over 200k a week. Signing that literally just completes you life. The fact he's saying no to that tells you that he is very serious now about returning back to us, and he's very serious about winning trophies now in his career. Today, news broke that Man City have all but confirmed the signing of Calvin Phillips now from Leeds United for like 43 million. And you know, the competition for Rice continues to grow smaller and smaller and smaller, and it just feels like West Ham eventually just won't have much bargaining power to keep on preventing the sale of the player. I guess what I say to that is, if I'm Rice, I would look at the situation involving Wilfried Zaha. For me, he was more than good enough to play for, you know, a top 6 team in this country, but the asking fee that Palace slapped on the player and their insistence that if that fee is not met, they will never sell the player, of course, naturally means that it's going to kill any hopes you have of playing at a higher level. So I definitely think that there's food for thought here to make sure that you don't fall for the same traps and stop the opportunities for you to progress in your career. Still though, let's continue on with these reports. He reports that Todd Boehly today held dialogue with the owner of West Ham. He knows that Tuchel is a big fan of him as well too, and Todd Boehly is taking a very active role currently. He's speaking to all the owners in the Premier League to start a dialogue, to let them know who he is and to start forming some relationships as well too. But before I give my thoughts and opinions though, the last bit of news is that it seems like we are open to a possible player exchange, and talks are that both Breuer and Ross Barkley have been offered as part exchanges to try and get something happening over the lines now. Seems quite interesting. I feel like if there was one window for Rice to leave, it would have to be this one. But now here's when I give my thoughts and opinions. Yes, we know that Rice has 2 years left in his deal currently, but it's still going to take the sale of a midfield player before we can actually commit to the full signing. And I guess the only midfield player that I could honestly realistically see, you know, moving out to make space for a Rice would be Jorginho. But I think here's where there's a big conversation about what you actually do here. Because with Jorginho, as said by Tuchel himself, you know, he's a player that needs structure around him. You know, we know that he has physical weaknesses, but it's up to the managers to be able to find ways to, you know, get the best out of a player's weaknesses and strengths. And it's Jorginho's strengths in particular, you know, the leadership, his communication on the field, and his ability to dictate that tempo as well too. These are the key criteria that Tuchel wants to have in his pivot in midfield, because as I keep saying, it's all about the pressing trap of trying to attract the opposition to press your guys. And when you have someone like Jorginho who's very composed on the ball, very intelligent with his short pass, one of the best short passes in the world in my opinion, of course, that's going to complement the manager's demands. So if you make a move for Rice, he is a defensive midfield player and Jorginho is a regista. These aren't the same thing, you guys. They're completely different roles, completely different interpretations of how you play in midfield. And it could be argued that if you were to go for a Declan Rice, to go for a defensive midfield player, could that not benefit the midfield and the attack even more, knowing that they have proper solidity and support behind them? Rice also used to play in defense as well. And for me, I just get flashbacks to John Obi Mikel. I mean, Mikel under Ancelotti in that season when we were scoring goals for fun. You know, he would drop back into the defense position, basically form a back three that way, and that would allow the fullbacks to push on really high, going all the way to the byline, and that created a lot of like overlapping runs, width, and you know, a lot of attacking opportunities. It was no surprise that we scored so many goals during that season. And with Declan Rice, tactically, this is something that the player can offer you. I can't help but feel like if you were to go for Rice, Jorginho would have to be sold. But let's see how the story continues to play out, you guys. So share your thoughts and opinions. Keep Jorginho or go for Declan Rice. So right now we end things with the final story, and let's discuss the future of young Ian Maatsen, as it's reported by many outlets now in Holland that the player has currently arrived in Rotterdam in Holland over a proposed move to sign for Feyenoord. Now Feyenoord have been interested in Maatsen since April, where they made their intentions very clear. It's looking like he is going to be that replacement now for Maatsen, who's literally about to sign for Lyon for like 15 million, and he is a very technical player. And I like the fact that maybe Feyenoord are going for Ian Maatsen. Now, when it comes to the deal, at the time of me making this video, they are saying that this is going to be a 1-year loan with an option to buy at the end. But the reason why I'm mentioning this point, you guys, is that it said very clearly in today's updates that even though Maatsen now has already agreed personal terms, now that he's in Rotterdam to, you know, get ready for this move, there still isn't a final agreement at this point in time. So things could potentially change. Maybe it's going to be a loan exclusively, maybe it's going to be like a transfer deal, or maybe it's going to be a loan with an option to buy at the end. Now last season, Maatsen won Coventry's Young Player of the Year awards. He played like over 41 games in the Championship of Coventry, put in some very good performances too. Literally just turned 20. The guy has a big future ahead of him. I guess personally it's a bit disappointing that he doesn't even get a pre-season to really show what he can do, but at the same time, if the manager's really not as interested in you anymore, then it makes sense for the player now to focus on him and of course secure a pretty big move to Feyenoord, because if he performs really well for them, clubs like this are your stepping stone on to bigger and better things. And as said by a former Chelsea player in Dabo, who was on Alex Goldberg's The Ballon podcast like a few months back, you know, he has a lot of belief in Maatsen's talents, but he also knows that Chelsea aren't really an academy club. So if he doesn't make it here, he's easily going to make it elsewhere. And for me, with the guy's technique, skill, ability in the final third, I think it's a very exciting move to Feyenoord, and I'm hoping at least there's an option to just let the player leave on loan so we can at least assess him maybe next year. But at the same time, I think I just have to accept the reality of the situation and just wish the player luck in the future. So there you guys, they are all the latest reports that dropped today. Another big day for content. I hope you guys definitely enjoyed it, and if you do, please hit that like button and of course even subscribe as well too. So on that note, I'm Nini FC, this is BlueLionsTV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos. Cool.